everyone, and welcome to the Wright Perspective. Today, we are going to recap and review The Music Man, a 1962 American musical film directed and produced by Morton DaCosta, based on Meredith Willson's 1957 Broadway musical of the same name. The movie stars Robert Preston, Shirley Jones, Buddy Hackett, Hermione Gingold, Ron Howard, and Paul Ford. This movie was nominated for 5 Academy Awards and won 1 for Best Musical Score, and it was nominated for 5 Golden Globes, winning 1 for Best Motion Picture Musical. The movie, which had an estimated budget of $4.2 million, made almost $15 million. It was also the first film to ever sell for $1 million to television. For some, these accolades would be enough to consider this movie a classic. But today, we will determine whether it is a classic from the Wright Perspective. We'll do a recap, discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol picked especially for this discussion. But we have to start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
Hi, I'm Brittany Wright, and I am the youngest.
And y'all, this is really a flashback to our childhood because our mom really loved Music Man. Right? Did any of y'all tell her that we were doing this recording this week?
No, she'll be very happy.
It's crazy because I feel like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, we must have been super young when we were watching this. I was like, I don't remember any of this.
But it's crazy because I remember watching it all the time.
Me too.
But like, none of the plot points except like the end parts. You know, like I remember Shipoopi.
Yeah.
I remember when he first sang 76 trombones.
Yes.
And I remember the end where they started changing. But like really the whole plot of the movie, I didn't remember it.
Yeah.
But I remember watching it all the time.
Me too.
Listen, I didn't know that those certain things were from the movie. Like I knew Shipoopi when he started singing it. I was like, oh, that's from this. And then when she said egads, I was like, oh, that's from this.
Yeah.
I remember the little boy having a list. I was like, but I don't remember this stuff being associated with this movie.
Yeah.
And it was very little of it that came back. Like there were parts that came back. Like one Grecian Urn.
I can remember us laughing at that. Yes, the part I remembered that I just remembered and was looking forward to seeing was Ron Howard going, the Wells Fargo street. Like I was looking forward to him doing that. And when it happened, it was so satisfying.
I was when he first sang Gary, Indiana.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I was like, it's something mixed up because I thought Ron Howard sang that. And then later it goes back and then Ron Howard sings it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's they sing it twice.
Crazy. Again, when it started happening, I was like, Gary, Indiana's from this. What?
So
I said, why don't I remember all this stuff in the
but not in the Music Man, right?
So sis, what did you remember? And no, it was the Music Man. Any of it?
I think that I knew that little boy was going to have a lisp.
Okay.
Like that was it.
Okay.
But like everything else, I was watching it and I was just like, why can't I remember anything that's happening? It was like watching it for the first time, but it also being familiar to the point where there was sometimes I wasn't really paying attention. And I was like, oh, I know what's happening here. I get the gist. And so I was like, oh, that's great.
Brittany, you know the concept of this podcast is
watching the content.
Say that again.
So that's what we do. We watch the content.
Don't let you know what, viewers, let me tell you what Genia thinks watching content is. Genia thinks Aubrey is probably the only one that watches it. Genia thinks watching content is doing your nails, taking a shower, washing clothes, cooking, writing a manifesto while you are watching a movie. That's not watching it.
Brittany, the only thing that just is a little problematic with your story is that
you want to use your $5 words with me.
Is that I have copious notes at the end.
She does have copious notes.
And they're all in our shared drive, which neither of you ever access. Okay. But all of the notes
no one knows how to get to that drive. No one knows how to
you've got the link.
No one knows
you've got the link.
No one knows where it is.
All I know is
say it because our sister likes to control us, but she pretends like there's a file. You guys don't look in the file when really there is none. And she's like, "Well, you missed it. It was in the file," but really, she just never wanted us to have it.
We are way off track.
We're so off track.
I mean, we're
on the track if you ask me. We're right on that train with those salesmen.
Okay. Right. Nice try. Nice attempted segue. Okay.
We actually sing that part of that song in chorus. The one in the beginning.
Oh, when they're doing all the
give
talking.
Give us a skosh of it. Give us a skosh of it, bro. Just a skosh.
No. It was a deep dark.
Because a skosh is so small.
It's just a little amount.
Cool.
I'm sorry. It was one of those things that came back to me when I was watching it because I remember us. It was like it was part of a medley of like some other stuff. I forgot I was even in chorus.
Yes, wait, was it in high school? Because shout out to Mr.
No, it was middle school.
No, okay, it was middle school. Wait, who was that middle school?
I feel like I performed "Good Night, My Someone" when I used to sing classical voice. I feel like I performed "Good Night, My Someone" because I knew that song. Been a good one. Yeah, I knew it really well for some reason.
And we
let's
we are back. We're back. Back on track.
Yes, we are. And it's time to pick a voting symbol. Okay. And this will be the voting symbol that we will use at the end of this episode to determine whether this movie is a classic. And I have one voting symbol to recommend for consideration. And it is the conductor's wand. Why? Because the conductor's wand, it ensures that everyone is on the same page. Right. And it just makes sure everybody is moving together. And guess what? That's exactly what Professor Harold Hill did, but he did it as a manipulative tactic. Okay. There he was just conducting the whole town to just do exactly what he wanted them to do. And the people just fell in line.
She's right.
Okay. All right.
I hate it.
Listen,
I hate it
she got it from those copious notes.
See? The notes pay off.
Because when she's right, we're just feeding the beast. And even her reasoning is pretty reasonable.
Yes.
Because he was conducting the town. He was.
And I have 2 more bullets of rationale, but maybe I should stop while I'm ahead.
Oh, no, I need them. I need both bullets.
Okay.
I'm ready.
The other two is that, so first of all, we know that when we see him in his quiet time, there's one point where he's at the footbridge and we see him, he's alone in his quiet time. And we start to realize that he really would like to conduct a band. He has a moment of fantasizing for himself that he is a band conductor. So what we're starting to understand is this huge manipulation at some root. It's something that he actually wishes was true. And then the last bullet is that, because, we get a sense that this is something that actually at its core is a desire of his, as he's, again, using his wand, manipulating everybody, he's actually conning himself out of the life he actually wants. And that's what this movie is about. It's about that arc of deception and then coming to terms with what is real. And so I propose a conductor wand.
Janiyah, that was
good.
Well, that was good.
That was good.
Yes.
I can't. I badly want to be able to laugh as I normally do at your over analytics as it relates to, but I feel like every point you made.
Yes.
It was
Season 3. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So good.
I'm on board with the one. I was going to say the thing that the baton. It's not a baton. Whatever the one. I think it's still a baton. The one that they lead with the
the
big
band.
stick one.
Yeah. I think it's still a baton.
It's probably still called a baton. I think.
Yeah, I think it's still a baton, but.
Oh, I hope it's called a baton, y'all, because all three of us went to HBCUs, honey, and that would just not be a good thing.
Well, whatever it's called is not what we call it. I do know. We probably got another name for it.
Like the hot stick. the stepping stick. We probably call it the stepping stick.
What?
It's like the guy who's at the front of the marching band. He's so like getting it.
Oh so
he's holding the stepping stick. No,
okay, it is called a baton.
Okay,
it is called a baton.
I was so concerned.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Sis, are you down? Are you down with this idea of our voting symbol?
I mean, if you like good ideas, sure. Because I was like 10 of them. I had a whole I was so many stored up.
Clearly, she had none, but it's
books.
All right,
a band.
All right. Let's get on.
Problem.
What's the next?
The mayor.
Next point.
A pocket watch.
It's such an ongoing issue. It's an ongoing issue that is not resolving itself. The next part is a recap. We do a recap for our new viewers and listeners. We do a recap at the top of our podcast because our content, like today's content, is generally quite old. Okay. And people, sometimes they don't remember all the details and they need a refresh. Or sometimes I'm a middle child. I'm used to persevering through shenanigans. I'm used to overcoming people trying to thwart, my trajectory. So the other reason we do recap is that sometimes people happen to see the content, but they just want to enjoy the podcast. And so let's hop in with a recap of The Music Man. So The Music Man, it is set in 1912 in River City, Iowa. A con man going by the name of Professor Harold Hill, played by Robert Preston, comes to town with one goal in mind: to trick the townspeople into paying him to start a boys' marching band. His plan was to sell them instruments and uniforms and then leave town immediately before even teaching the children how to play the instruments because he doesn't know how to play the instruments. Okay. And this plan might seem far-fetched, but he knew it could work because he had successfully run the ploy in several other cities. His experience had also taught him that in order to be successful, he would need to do two things. Number one, he would need to get the town to believe that they needed a band. And number two, he would need to befriend and manipulate any local music teachers so they wouldn't expose him. How will he get the town to believe that they need a band? By creating an irrational fear that the boys have too much idle time. A new pool table had just been delivered to town, and Harold Hill convinces the town that playing pool is the gateway to all evil, including ragtime music. He tells them, "You've got trouble with a capital T and that rhymes with P and that stands for pool." And he tells them that if they don't find something constructive for the boys to do, like being a marching band, they will play pool and all will be lost. And for the most part, the town is falling for it, hook, line, and sinker. The Mayor George Shin, played by Paul Ford, and the school board, played by the singing group the Buffalo Bills, are skeptical, and they keep asking Harold Hill for evidence of his credentials, which of course he never provides because they don't exist. He just keeps manipulating and distracting them. And there's another skeptic in town, just as Harold predicted, in the form of the local piano teacher and librarian, Marion Peru, played by Shirley Jones. She is also the local spinster because she's in her late 20s and isn't married yet. Marion does some research and finds evidence that Professor Harold Hill isn't who he says he is. Harold has been working overtime to get on her good side, flirting with her and schmoozing her family up, which of course just makes him seem all the more suspicious to her. But just as she is about to expose him, she starts to realize how much joy and excitement he's brought to the town. Even if the band will never materialize, the town has really enjoyed the process of preparing for the band. The kids in particular are super excited to be a part of the band, including Marion's little brother, Winthrop, played by Ron Howard, who has been antisocial for the last 2 years since their father died. Even little Winthrop is excited and coming out of his shell. Instead of turning Harold in, Marion decides to let his con play out, figuring it would do more good than bad. She even decides to let herself fall in love with him, fully knowing he is being inauthentic and that she doesn't even know his real name. Just as the con is wrapping up and Harold Hill has collected all the money and is about to leave town, Marion lets him know that she has known about his lies the entire time, but she's ready to say goodbye because she knows he has to leave town quickly to get away with the scam. And Harold is so touched by this, he falls in love with her, and now he doesn't want to leave town. Unfortunately, his revelation comes at the same time that another traveling salesman, an honest traveling salesman, has come to town to tell the truth about Professor Harold Hill, and he brought evidence. Harold's shenanigans is wrecking sales for all of the honest traveling salesmen. The town is very angry at first, and they have Harold Hill arrested, but then when they see their kids all dressed in their little band uniforms and trying to play the instruments, even with no actual training whatsoever, they're so overcome with emotion and in their imagination, seeing the possibilities about the band, that they decide to let Professor Harold Hill off the hook. And you don't see it, but it's safe to assume that he stays in the town and he and Marion live happily ever after. The end.
All right, very good. Oh boy.
Oh God.
This.
Oh boy. Okay, so I let me tell you, I don't know what I'm voting. Okay. This movie was quite a journey for me. Honestly, of the three of us, I'm probably the least sensitive to things that were, for the time, a little questionable. Because I always calculate the time and then I feel like, but like this movie had some moments where I felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't want to immediately.
I want to know immediately.
I'm just curious because, okay, there's a part in the movie where this is a white town, which I'm fine with.
Totally.
In middle America. And I think that we need to be very specific about that. This is in the state of Iowa. You're in middle America.
I thought it was Illinois.
Iowa.
Okay. They were in Iowa. Or I what did they say? Iowa. Okay. That song. But yeah, it's Iowa.
And I can accept all of that. Like that doesn't even raise something for me. But they did a skit at a school. Wasn't it a school function or something?
It was.
And I heard them say something about this basically Native American skit that was coming up.
Yeah, it was a 4th of July event that was being held in the high school because the weather was sketchy.
And I heard them say something about it. And I was like, I must have heard that wrong. And then it was a straight up skit. And I'm like, this is like, I rewinded it because I was like, were they trying to satirize something here? Because it felt like even for the time, it was like
the most
bad.
I paused, looked at the captions to make sure that I wrote this down exactly for us. Okay. This was the name of the skit. Watan Ye girls of the local wigwam of the Hiawatha. And then white women of all ages came out onto the stage dressed in like stereotypical indigenous people of this country costume And it was just like, even the music was like the stereotypical music.
And they were using the word Indian. And I just was like.
And in the town, when Harold Hill first got to the town, they had outside of one of the cigar shops, one of the big wooden
cigars.
Yeah. And I was just like, yeah.
And that would have been, for example, something that
you could have got over.
I'd have been like, but I, at that point, I was like, I'm still gonna, obviously we're gonna watch this movie. But it was just, I'm telling you, it was just a weird moment.
It almost seemed like
welcome to the dark side, brother.
It almost seemed like it was shoehorned in, though, didn't it?
It was an unnecessary part. It was like part.
It didn't even
work. It didn't even
do
work
with the plot, or like it's like when you have, let's say you see somebody like a stereotypical, like if we're watching a movie from the 1930s, and then you see like a stereotypical Black person like, hey, sir, I could wash some shoes, shine them shoes. It's like, it's an ugly truth. And but it's, at least in the plot, it's like, that's probably
what would have happened.
Yeah, but it's just like, yo, this just can't, like you said, it was out of nowhere. Then it just went away.
And I tried to Google, and I didn't even know how to Google about this, because I was like, maybe there was some tradition of women's societies, doing this kind of thing.
Or I was hoping.
And I was like, if that existed, then it would have been them shining a light on something that was a problematic.
And that's what I was hoping. But when I rewound them watching, I'm like, no, this was just, I don't know.
It was a tradition. Racism.
The oldest American tradition. Well, since we're talking about, though, I this is like a perfect time to talk about like the groupings, the community groupings that were in the city.
Okay.
So, the one we're talking about in particular, there's like the mayor's wife, and she's the head of like all of like what we would probably call just like the old hens. It's just all the ladies are like the gossipy ladies of the town.
Shout out to Mary Will.
But they were trans.
Yes, I love her.
Yes. I was so happy. I recognized her too, sis. And y'all, she's one of the nuns from Sister Act.
Yeah.
And she was there. Love that.
Yeah.
And so this little crew, they're like the town gossips, but they're also like, they're also the ones that are like doing all the charity work, and they're also the ones that are like the entertainment for the town, because they're just like, they consider themselves like dancers. And like,
just so cultured. They're cultured.
And they are
with them chicken feathers in their heads.
Right.
No, they had them dressed like birds. And I'm going to tell you, that was a good comment. They were intercutting with
pictures of chickens,
the actual chickens,
while the women were talking. And pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little. If they were gossiping in a song and looking like chickens, and then being intercut with chickens.
And I'm not trying. I want to go back to this, but when I saw that one was so blatant.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, maybe they're just doing that in this movie. Like maybe they're just going over the top. But which made me think about the skit we were talking about. But I'm like, I just don't know what point,
Okay. But if you say it like that, I could see them making it so to show how out of touch they were with reality.
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping. because they were, think about
forgiven.
No, I'm not.
But the Grecian Urn Scene. To me, that they were making a mockery of this type of women, this type of group of women.
Yeah, the Grecian Urn seemed like it pretty much solidified.
She was like, let's practice again. When they were practicing, and I was just like, this is ridiculous.
Grecian Urn.
She was like, what? Grecian Urn. And all those books fell off. That still got an audible laugh.
Yeah, totally.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking that you probably found some factoid that kind of.
And you know what? Maybe I could have searched harder, but I ended up only Googling like racist things in the Music Man movie. Like, but that wasn't the right search. Like, it needed to be something like, I don't even know. It's just like these traditions of mockery.
Well, and here's the funny thing is that you made this, our voting symbol, and you're going very deep. But the funny thing is, there are some deep themes in this movie.
Absolutely.
Because like that whole them being that way was spilling over into this feminist, anti-feminist conversation.
Woo!
Because within you had them who were displaying one way, and then you have this woman, and I'm gonna tell y'all, even I was like, dang, like she was like, her mom was talking to her like her time is about to run out, and this woman is obviously like 20 something.
She was 26.
She was 26. And her mother was just like, your window's up. Time is up. No one's ever gonna choose you. Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't even talking like, well, you might want to start thinking of some things. I mean, she was talking like, like you're wrapped up, basically.
And it was obviously the general sentiment about her, because one of her piano students, a little girl, basically called her a spinster right to her face. And it's just
I looked at that little girl because I thought that she was Dorcas Gale as a little girl.
Did you check to see?
I did check. It wasn't her.
Okay.
It would have been. I was like, you've been like this your entire life.
Right.
Quite sassy.
Yeah.
Those movies,
Dorcas,
those movies were made like 2 years apart.
Dorcas Gailey is a character from Seven Brothers. So now we all know the truth about Brittany's math and history skills. I didn't even look that much. Yeah, the actress that played Dorcas Gailey went to go see this in the theater as an adult. So, well, y'all,
that timeline's off.
Yeah, it's a little off.
But it's an interesting thing because even that movie had some conversation built in about feminism,
big
right?
time.
But they didn't treat Millie like they were treating. I mean,
they treated Millie like she still had a hope.
Yeah, it was
like you're not choosing a man, but you should just get on it. Whereas with this chick, it was like, well, you're a librarian.
Intrinsically in the whole, and that's why I was thinking maybe they're just being over the top and making fun of everything, because when you look at the structure of this family, the mom is knocking on 50, right? Like she looks like a middle-aged woman. She has a 7-year-old or 6-year-old kid. So even the structure of this family, it wouldn't make sense for her to be talking the way she did when she obviously, had a baby later on in life. You know what I'm saying? So it was just, I was like,
when that little boy ran in, she was like, "You're not gonna say hi to your sister?" I said, "Say what?" I mean, you sure that's not her child? I'm like, I feel like there's a backstory. Like
that was my first thought.
Nobody knew.
That was my first thought. I was like, they went there. She had a baby out of wedlock in the 60s. Like that's deep.
And bro, I love though this theme about like this feminism piece and the way that women were portrayed in this thing that we started talking about, because that mayor's wife, she was really interesting. And there was a point at the end of the film, I don't know if y'all caught it, where she was grappling with her identity and in her autonomy as a woman, right? Because she, as much as she's like posturing all about town, she's always representing her husband's perspectives. Mm-hmm. And so whenever she was going against him in any way,
as they were,
that's right, he was flip-flopping. Okay, let the record show. But because he was being manipulated, But she was, really championing his viewpoint throughout the whole thing. And then at the end, when it came time for the town to vote really democratically to kind of like stand up and be in support of Harold Hill, or stay seated and let him, face consequences for all of his lies and manipulations. She stood up. And then her husband told her to sit down. And she sat right down so fast. But then she thought about it a beat, and her friends were encouraging her, and then she did stand up.
Yeah.
The
Irish woman
I
told her to stand up. Mm-hmm.
I feel like it represented the two extreme sides of this conversation. And then it somehow ended up in like a nuanced position somehow.
Yes.
By like displaying both sides of, which was like, I wonder if that was intentional or if it just
I feel like it had to be. I feel like it had to be, because I will say this was written by a woman, which I will say that matters. That matters, because a lot of the things, like even a lot of the fairy tales that we all think of, were written by men. And so the fact that this was written by a woman, and actually I'm making assumptions that that this is a woman's name here. I should not make assumptions that it's Meredith Wilson. I think that's always.
I'll look it up right quick.
Yeah, see, because I'm just assuming that's a woman's name. But you just never know.
Yeah, you never know. But I'm just saying that.
But even the love story, right? Because the woman who, by the way, y'all, Shirley Jones, that's the mom from the Partridge Family. Did y'all catch that?
Mm-mm. I never watched Partridge.
Oh,
Marion Peru, the woman who played Marion Peru.
That ain't no woman.
Okay,
that's
not a woman.
See, yes.
See, we can't walk through life with these assumptions about gender, even when we go back in history.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But the love story, I thought, was really interesting for the time, because normally what would normally happen, y'all, and let's just keep it real, what would normally happen is that a woman would be manipulated. She would then find out that she was being manipulated, but then she would forgive, and love would conquer all. But in this story, she knows she's being manipulated, and she makes the choice to be in the moment in the relationship and to take it for what it is. And I thought, man, even nowadays, we don't see stories like that. Even nowadays, the women get tricked and they forgive the man.
But can I, and this is what was interesting about this. I don't feel like it came down on any one side of this argument in any kind of way, or this discussion, I should say.
It was presenting different pieces.
Because yes, she did make those decisions, but the other part of me is like, but he's actually kind of a really bad dude. like yes, they show this kind of nuanced side of him where it's like, if you dig deep, but at the end of the day, he never really self-actualized at any point in this movie.
No.
And so it's like, yes.
Except, bro, that he stays there to face the consequences. That's the only thing, because he still could have run away. There were about, at the end of when the town was literally running around with torches looking for him.
Listen, when I saw these torches, I said, y'all,
like,
is this necessary?
Your town is well.
Because y'all seem to have electricity.
Everyone
they said they were going to tar and feather it.
I was like, this is so
everyone can
aggressive.
See. You don't need these torches.
Don't need the torches.
But they're running around with the torches.
Tar and feather.
Tar and feather.
They wanted tar and feather. I was like, I feel like a refund and then sending them on a train would be
like,
really good.
You don't got a jail?
Just lock them up.
We got the tar and feather.
Well, I'll tell you this. He had multiple chances to get away, right? And he just didn't take it. He decided just to stay there and face the music. So, bro, that's the one way where we did see a little bit of an arc for him emotionally.
That was redeeming, but he made that decision kind of after they talked, and like he was more like standing there. It wasn't like, I didn't get that feeling that he was like, it was like he was just sitting there in the awe of the fact that she knew everything, and he was just kind of letting it happen, whatever. And I'm not trying to, I don't want to argue against the guy because he did face the music, but I felt like more than him going to go face it, it was just like, all right, well, I'll let it happen. You know, like
because it could, and there's another way to look at it. It's like another selfish act on his part, because it's like, oh, I want this woman now. And I got to stay here and see what it takes for me to get her. So I see what you're saying, bro.
So it didn't feel like
it's not like he had a storyline where he got to like give the money back. You know, he didn't say, I'm going to pay to have someone come to town and actually teach your children the songs. If he had done that, that would have been the real redemption.
It was this broke man moving into his girlfriend's mama house after he did not go to jail. And her taking him, a broke man, her taking him in. He's a good man.
But he's not broke though. He's not broke.
He's not broke because of all the other places that he's lied about and went and lied to. But then what did she do? She stands up, she goes, but he's a good man. Y'all don't understand him the way I do. Take this. Let me break this stick. Go take it and direct the people.
That's right. You got this.
You're really going to be able to help these people. And these children sounded a mess. Those children sounded a mess.
They did.
But she's on the sideline.
That is composing. That is exactly like if you were to translate it.
Yes.
That's exactly. And that's why it feels weird. It's like she's like a feminist icon on one side. But on the other side, it's like you are also enabling, like there was no conversation about his path to redemption was so quick.
Here's the thing though, bro. And as a woman, you are taught this, that there is going to be some shenanigans about a man that you're just going to have to be like, and here's the stick, boo.
Right.
The man. You're like, you're ready. That in your mind. This is ridiculous. You know in your mind, this is the most ridiculous thing. I cannot believe that I am literally about to okay this. But because you're like, I'm learning that men mature differently when they get into relationship and when they get married and they meet the right woman, and you're learning all of this all the time, and it's literally programmed in you. So when I'm watching her sit there and break the teacher stick to give him to direct this band that's about to sound a mess because none of them know how to play instruments, I said, I get it. I get it, girl. I get it, girl. He's like the last single man in the town. The other single people are teenagers and children. Here he is, and you know what? On this train, he got kind of a job. You know, he's not all bad. You rationalize after a while. And I'm like, girl, I get it, girl. I'll break the stick too. I would break the stick too.
I'm just saying that's what makes it interesting.
The other storyline that was a little bit about women's liberation, it's one though that didn't finish. I feel like it didn't play out. They started and finished. And that was with the mayor's daughter, the girl who kept saying, "You guys."
Her name was Zanita. I said, yes. Where is this name coming from? Her name was Zanita.
And she really was in love with the town scallywag, you know. And by the way, all you have to do to be a scallywag in this town is set off a firecracker.
Yes. Whoa! And make sure that your shirt is not always tucked in.
That's right. And all of a sudden,
and that happened at the end of the skit we were talking about.
Yes.
So I was like, were they trying to like make
it had to be a mocking. It had to be a mocking because they did so much mocking. But in that storyline, you know, Harold Hill ends up working with that young man and making him the leader of the band. And he does it because he knows that all the other kids will follow him. He finds out that because he's like the town scallywag, the other kids will follow his lead. And so Harold Hill makes him the head of the band. But what he ends up doing is really giving the band a very constructive leader for the young people. And so this young man, we start to see all of his good attributes come out, but the mayor never, ever gives the green light for him to date the daughter. We only see the mayor not approve multiple times. I wanted to see a moment where the mayor was like, you did a great job, Danny.
What about when he was like, we'd rather be doing it in your
Tommy.
When Tommy.
Yes. Well, he stood up. So his name was the character was Tommy DJ.
We'd rather be doing this in the front of your back.
Oh. And the actor is Timmy Everett. Okay.
Yeah.
And actually, I should say the name of Zanita too, because we were talking about her
Shout out to
that actress,
Timmy Everett. I looked him up. You grew up handsome. I just want you to know that. I said, okay, then.
Yes.
All right.
And the actress who played Zanita Shin, her name is Susan Lucky. That's a great stage name.
That is a good name.
But so yeah, bro, that's a good point. Like Tommy stands up to the mayor and says, listen, we're dating behind your back because you won't let us date in your front. But the mayor never blesses it. Even though we get to see Tommy really stepping up,
Yeah, that's how I felt like that arc ended. I felt like it was more about him stepping up than it was about the
mayor giving permission.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I like that too. Then
and you saw the
because he was evolving into a man through the little things that were happening.
Okay, so it wasn't about getting the blessing. It was about him.
I didn't take it that way because
I like that.
The reason why I was like, that's a good conversational masculinity in my mind.
Big time.
Because I'm like, this movie has a lot of interesting little tidbits and they don't come down hard on any side. They're just, creating a conversation like we're having right now. Totally. Like, I'm going to tell you, for me, you could one for one transpose how Harold Hill was acting in terms of politics since the dawn of time. The way that he just went in, all the people were excited about the pool table. And that was kind of good movie line because they showed the pool table coming in before you knew
it was going to be relevant.
Yeah, that was going to be relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was excited about the pool table coming in. But he needed to create a need for the band, just like you were talking about. So he literally just manufactured something. And it was just interesting to watch how the group think just takes all. It was like, you're just saying something that's not based in anything. And everybody gets on.
Well, I will tell you this, for me, that was something that I was thinking about when I was watching this. We don't think on our own. We think of things that will sound good and will move with the wind with it if you just say a couple of things that make sense or to us. But really, it's just a manipulation tactic.
And also, we want to be afraid. And like we've been socialized to be attracted to conflict and fear. Like that is how the media, like the news, if it bleeds, it leads. Right? It's not if it uplifts humanity, it leads. It's if there's conflict, if it has some kind of prominent person involved. That's what makes something newsworthy, know? And so our whole values around like what is important and what to follow, even the way that we pick politicians, it's like
before you get off the word of politician, I just want to say this one thing. And there's this one commercial, and one of the people that are running in Pennsylvania, he is a professor. And it's so funny to me because the commercial goes, he is this, and they're saying it negatively. They're like, it's this, he's this, and a professor. And I was like, that's a teacher. He's teaching stuff. Like, we don't want that. Every time I hear the commercial, it just makes me laugh. But it goes to this conversation of who's the one receiving it? Who is the one hearing this information and they're processing it as he's just out here teaching lies. And me, I'm like, but he's like a paid professor at a prominent university. He can't be teaching lies, is he? I don't like this is what my mind is doing, but they can. He can.
Yeah, totally.
That part of human nature it's good to recognize that all of us are susceptible to groupthink in that way.
Every last one.
Like, yeah, this is a comedy movie, but just the commentary on all you got to do to get people riled up. He was just walking behind people like, pool tables are bad. And he would just duck down and go to another part. Like, we really need a band.
Right.
And people are just like, yeah, we need a band. You were just saying the pool table was a good thing.
Totally.
And now And on the flip side of that, it showed how the politicians are just beheads to whoever is manipulating them.
And again, so easily distracted, so easily manipulated.
The last person who's in the room.
In the movie, the school board, they almost have like a city council kind of function, and that the mayor is constantly referring to them as like his deputies and things like that. And the school board, they are really coming after Professor Harold Hill to get his credentials. And so instead of giving the credentials, he teaches them to sing. And he essentially tricks them into becoming like a barbershop quartet. And they're so excited that they sound good that they just, every single time they come for him, he'll like somehow manipulate them into like using their new hobby of like singing together in harmony. And it's one of those things where, bro, I just love your point. It's like another comment on politics, and groupthink. And then another one, y'all, was the fact that it was the Wells Fargo wagon coming down the street. I was just like, yeah, see, we can't forget that the old money in this country is old. Okay. And I was just like, man, these names, these families, they are still out here. The wealth remains concentrated with this same handful of folks, y'all. This same handful of folks. And so I was happy that they put a name on it.
And it's funny because that was when you see it, you're like, wow. Like it's 2022 and there's still a Wells Fargo wagon on every corner.
Yeah, big time. And think about the way that we've been looking forward to like Amazon packages and coming during the pandemic.
Wow.
Years to come.
It was the same way the whole town was like, oh, the delivery wagon's coming. Y'all, same thing. We're just giving that wealth. We're just allowing it to concentrate all the time.
Every time.
Can I ask y'all this? What do y'all think? And I don't want to start wrapping up because we still got to talk about the music real quick.
Yeah, and the dancing.
But the music and the dancing. But I'm curious, what do y'all think at the end they were trying to portray with everybody switching over? Like at the end of the movie, there's a point where they just got done playing horribly. And then they come out onto the street and then they start transforming into a real band. Was that just a thing they put in there?
I thought it was their imaginations. So here's how I interpreted it. Because remember, it starts out with the kids playing horribly and the parents standing up to say, that's my child, play it, baby. And those parents were loving their kids. I remember
that part too. We used to always laugh at that.
Oh my gosh, the parents, I wrote some of them down. It's the Linus, play to me, son, play.
Yeah, that one used to always make us laugh.
Yes, right. And so listen, the parents thought they did a good job. And so what I thought they were showing us was how the community was seeing the band, not how it was actually playing out. So at the end, when it truly was 76 trombones, I thought it was just their imaginations and their like excitement. What did you think, sis?
I actually didn't have any thoughts about that part. I'm not lie to you. I was just like,
it wasn't weird.
You were just like,
no, because I was just like, it's a musical. Obviously, they're going to go for raggedy band outfits and shiny ones.
I cannot argue with that.
But I was like, where did all these people in the town come from?
Where did all those little boys come from?
What? Is this what happened? And that's it. The girls got baton outfits. What? Okay, this is none of my business. This is a musical at this point. And I'm like, oh, yes, they have shiny red outfits on. That's all it did. That's all I thought about.
But you're not wrong, though. Because I thought it was possibly imagination or maybe a time jump. And I've always thought about this ever since we were kids. It's always been one of those things back in my mind, like whatever. But the only reason why I didn't think it was their imagination was because when he did it, when he started off and he transformed, it was like she noticed it. I forget her name that quick. But it was like No.
Oh,
not
Zanita.
The girl.
Zanita. Zenita noticed that it changed, she reacted and then looked and she changed.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing that made me feel like it might
have been
like,
a time jump or something.
Or magic, or I don't know. I was just curious what y'all.
I was stick with magic only because it couldn't have been a time jump because the kids were still little.
Right. They were still the same age.
They were still the same age.
Yeah, but that's why I thought it was the imagination, because the parents, they showed us they showed us that the parents already thought it sounded good when we could all hear it couldn't. When we all heard that it didn't sound good, the parents thought it did. And so that's why I thought they were just letting us see what it looked like.
I like that explanation the best. That's the explanation I'm going with.
Because that was the band you clap for, not the band they were actually clapping for.
Listen, people, the moral of that story is believe what you want to believe. Just don't hurt anybody. That's it. That's it. Just don't hurt anyone.
It was a nice way to end, though, because the other thing that got to happen in that, whatever it was, fantasy, time warp, time jump, whatever it was, we did get to see Harold Hill leading the band, which we know, again, from seeing him in his quiet time, we know that that's something that's actually his dream. And so it wasn't just the town getting what they wanted. It was him getting what he
dancing about.
And look, this brings a whole nother conversation because this movie has no moral. What's the thing where there's no good moral because I just don't feel like Harold Hill had a long arc of redemption. It felt like he just got everything he wanted.
Yeah, he didn't give the money back. If we got to see him give the money back, that would have really
he got the woman, he got the band, he got everything. And it was like, okay, it feels good, but
tale as old as time.
Yeah.
That's so many people's story. They do whatever you want. You still get all that you want.
That's how stuff usually ends up.
It's true. That's how
stuff ends up.
Y'all, there's something else in my notes that has to be read out loud. Okay. Because it was just like, I literally stopped, rewound, and paused on the caption to get this. Okay. And it is when all the salesmen at the very top of the movie, they were so mad. There was at the top of the movie, there was a train of traveling salesmen. Okay. And these are legit salesmen. They're trying to sell goods across the land.
Yes. And dictionary.
That's right. And now there are certain towns that won't even let them in because Harold Hill has pulled his shenanigans there with his fake band. And so all of these salesmen are on this train like, oh, if I ever see him, I'm going to get him. And this one calls Harold Hill a bare-faced, double shuffle, 2-bit thimble rigger. And I said,
that had me actually laughing. It was that one. And there was another one he said.
The whole song was full of these really interesting insults that are like, what are you even talking about? Even saying it out loud slowly, it still doesn't make sense. Bare-faced, double shuffle, 2-bit thimble rigger. It's still not a great insult, but he was saying it with such anger in his voice.
Wasn't one at one point, and I meant to write this down, but I didn't have my inner Genia channel. But they were he said something like, I don't give a my mother's petticoat cover or something like.
Oh, bro, the mayor.
I gotta look that.
The mayor had a bunch of those where he was like making these little sayings that weren't great, but it was funny. They were really funny. Those were funny.
Those were funny.
And you know what? That's actually, y'all, a good segue to the music. Because that was actually the first song that we saw. The very first song is the salesman on the train. Little do they know that Harold Hill is among them. They don't know. They're sitting there bashing him to high heaven, and they don't even know he's right there. And so then when they're talking stuff on him, they're like, oh, well, he knows better than to go to Iowa because people in Iowa are not going to fall for his crap. Then the train pulls up in Iowa, and he's like, you know what? And then Harold Hill reveals himself and says, oh, for some reason, I feel like going to Iowa. And then he just like hops off the train. He shows them his suitcase that says Professor Harold Hill, and he hops off the train. And then all of the other salesmen, they're hanging out the train window with their fists wagging. Oh, that thimble rigger!
I'm like, obviously y'all were not that mad because you could clearly just get
I was about to say because he hopped off
that train,
and then
was
y'all
so
could have
slow.
just hopped off with him.
They could have just
like,
grabbed him even. That
They
train
could
was
have
not
just grabbed him
moving.
and pulled him back in. It's like, this is not quite the escape that you're.
No, unless they
It's
all
not
had an
good.
appointment. Let's say that they all had an appointment they couldn't be late for. So they couldn't get off, y'all.
No, they could have got off.
But sis, I was not super impressed with the music in this movie.
Okay. Now, bro, what makes you say that?
Just wasn't. I liked 76 trombones.
Yeah.
I liked the one where she was singing the what was it? Good night, someone.
Good night, my someone.
My
That's
someone.
a lovely song.
That was a very nice song. But not only was I not super impressed with the music, it was a big violator of just having songs that had nothing to do with the plot. Like whenever he would come up and get the four dudes to sing, you know, and they would start singing.
Yes.
It was like, I get the joke, but why are y'all singing a whole song every time?
Yeah.
That doesn't even have nothing to do with the plot. It doesn't advance the plot. And Britt made I'm gonna just let you make the in our text, you made a great observation that irritated me too about how those musical numbers were ending.
Listen, it was so annoying that some of them were ending. They were fading to black and there was a spotlight. I was like, you're taking me out of them being in a town. Because I'm like, they're in, what is it, River City, Iowa. And I'm like, when you do this, it makes me feel like I'm watching a stage musical.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not watching a stage musical. I'm watching about River City, Iowa. And you keep taking me away from it.
Where's the spotlight come from?
I didn't like that.
Okay, so I can see that I need to really help translate this for you both. So what was actually happening?
And
try to stay with me.
It was the moon.
No. What was happening in those moments is that we were going deep into the internal, dialogue. All right. Because listen, think about, we saw it one time when she was saying good night, my someone. This is her innermost thoughts. Okay.
What?
And so that's what they were basically saying. This is not about all this.
So you mean when the barbershop quartet was on one corner and she was on the other corner?
Hate random songs more than any of them.
I do.
You're the one who hates it the most.
I do. I hate the random songs. I didn't hate the spotlight for the poignant moment though.
No, that was.
But I did struggle with the random songs. And let me just say, they had so many songs from that quartet that I literally looked it up and I said, were they a quartet? I Googled that because they had to be, and they were. They're a group called the Buffalo Bills. So it's almost like, did they have a contract to get 100 songs into the movie or something?
Or maybe those songs they were singing were popular at the time or something.
Okay, and it was to get it on the soundtrack maybe? But it was just like, come on, Buffalo Bills, we got it. Y'all sound good. Come on.
I would even been okay if they just start singing and walked away every time.
Yes. Well, you know what? I will say this, like, as much as I was struggling, so I did struggle with the pointless songs, the songs that were not moving the story along. What I struggled with even more than that was that they had a couple of things that they kept doing, which was the overlapping of two songs where it was like a song that we heard once and then we heard another song.
Yes, and then they would put them together.
Then they would put them together. If you do that one time, then it's like, oh, see, you're very creative. But then when you did it 2 times, I was like, why
are we doing this so many times?
This extended
and they did it
by
multiple
like 30
times.
minutes.
It did.
It also got on my nerves, the amount of people that couldn't sing. I mean, I understand that.
That's a good point.
I was just so frustrated because I was like, okay, we have that every now and then in a musical where a person is talking the words of the song. They're not actually singing, but it just kept happening. And I was like, I'm watching a musical. Give me someone that's musical.
Yeah,
like I don't see the whole town.
That's such a good
The whole
point.
town doesn't have to be in. The
I wasn't
song.
blown away.
Yeah,
I wasn't, and this is a musical. You're supposed to be
totally.
Every time.
And I wasn't blown away with the dancing either.
Yeah,
and the way the choreography, it felt very clumsy, and it wasn't because of how many people were there, because I think the masterclass is Seven Brothers for Seven Brothers.
absolutely.
And I'm gonna just let you know, they had all kind of people, but when you just saw the mastery of it, and then there were moments like my favorite moment in, or one of my favorite moments in Seven Brothers is when they're first having the face off, and you remember,
between the Ponapes and the
Ponapes and the townspeople.
Yes.
And like the Ponapes,
the bright shirts and the brown jackets.
Yeah, they're working hard not to beat these dudes down.
That's right.
Truly deserve beatdowns.
That's right.
Like in everything, they deserve it. But there was one point where they just couldn't take it no more. And they were about to be like, you know what? We going to the Ponape. We tried this nice stuff, Millie. And then Millie comes in and interrupts it and starts dancing with Caleb. And like that whole dance sequence where it was like everybody could dance, but there's levels. You know what I'm saying? I like those points in musicals where, and I didn't get any of those, where it was like, yeah, this is the group dancing together, but we also got Fred Astaire. You know what I mean? We also got, you know what I'm saying, somebody who's about to do.
Which that is something that I was struggling with was, I thought that, what was his name? Robert Pearson, the main guy that was Hill Harper, or what was his name in the movie?
So
Harold
Hill played by Robert Preston.
We knew what you were saying, Britt. I knew exactly what you were. Keep it moving. Don't even worry about it.
Robert Preston.
Let your haters be your motivators.
I thought that he was Dick Van Dyke.
It's similar. I
looked at him.
They do kind of look alike.
I said, wait, that's not him. And
I mean, like the way it reminded me of Dick Van Dyke.
It
did.
When Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins and his other stuff, and I was like, oh, that's not the same person.
Okay, I have a factoid.
This person.
I have a factoid about him, sis, that's going to reinforce your these people can't really sing.
Of Genia
okay,
factoids.
So
she's so excited right now.
Before starring in the musical, because Robert Preston, he was in the stage musical first before he was in the movie. Okay, but before starring in that musical, he had never been in a musical before, and in fact, he had never sung a note before.
It shows.
It shows.
Wow.
It shows. And you know, I will say, like, one of the things that I was, and again, what I'm realizing now is that I was doing a lot of convincing myself as I was watching this. You all remember for My Fair Lady, the main guy from My Fair Lady who played Dr. Henry
Higgins.
Thank you, Henry Higgins. Thank you. How could I forget?
That's my man.
We know that as an actor, he was not a great singer. And so they gave him that very talking
talk.
Exactly, to cater to him as an actor, which I appreciate it, you know?
Fine.
And so in this movie, when I first started to see that kind of talking, singing that was happening, I thought I was going to try to be okay with it, because I was thinking maybe they're going to allow that talking kind of singing to only exist in one space in the movie, so that it would be the voice of that space, you know? So I was like, maybe just the salesman will always be doing that chatty singing. Right. And then that'll make sense, because that'll be the voice of salesman.
Right.
Because that's, you know, now that I've been doing some, you know, taking writing classes and learning like how to create voice and characters, it does make sense to find a really unique way to give a voice to a specific community or a specific character. But the fact that they were doing it all over the place and none of them were top-notch singers, it was just, it started to feel like something they were trying to do to make up for the fact that nobody could sing real well. You know, even Marion, the main one,
She was okay.
She did. She did a pretty good job.
She did good. She did good.
She did well.
She did good.
But like, it wasn't I thought she did all right, but
I'm not going. But what I'm not going to do is compare her to like Julie Andrews or something.
Oh, so that's the problem. But that's what you expect,
ma'am. I'm not going to do it.
No,
that would not be expect in a leading lady. But that's a leading lady voice.
That won't be fair.
Yep.
And Debbie Reynolds. Think about Debbie Reynolds. Like, she's not up there with them.
Now, just for the audience, who is Debbie Reynolds?
From Singing in the Rain.
Exactly, Singing in the Rain.
Think about Singing in the Rain. Like when the number when he is dancing with those umbrellas, like that's a leading moment.
That's a leading.
You know what I mean? Like yes. There was no, I don't remember any of that. Like even like the moment where it should have happened was when he first sang 76 Trombones, but it didn't. It was cool. I liked it, but I'm saying it definitely wasn't, Gene Kelly. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. But I will say they did a good job, in my opinion, in the library scene. And I liked it because I appreciated the acrobatics of it.
I agree.
People flipping over poles and dancing on tables, and I appreciate.
Yeah, if you had to list them, that would be like the Hard Knock Life in Annie. Was like.
Yes, it was. Really
and this is something we didn't talk about earlier, just in our conversation about how he was the rapscallion in the little boy by him setting off firecrackers. It was also funny because they wanted them to stop giving out certain books that had like passionate poetry and all this literature. But it was funny because this is how they were like getting their scandal was from books. To think about how small this town was and to think about how easy accessible some things are these days. They were reading books and getting all these different ideas.
Thank you for saying
to have
that.
All the children in there, their noses were in these books, and now they were looking for scandal, but they were still reading. They were reading so much and having such a good time with just their imagination as well. To the library. Exactly, going to the library. Like I thought that was really interesting.
Yes, because that was a comment on censorship. Mm-hmm. Because you all remember
censorship too.
That's another one. It's another one. The storyline behind the library is that it was owned by a rich man that owned a lot of things in the town. His last name was Madison, and there are a lot of things in the town with his name on it. And he gave the building to the city when he died. But he gave the books to the librarian and gave her a charge to help elevate the culture of the city when he died, and giving her those books. And so,
because he knew if that city would have got a hold of it, a ton of those books would have been burned thrown away, which I mean, is still a conversation that's happening today.
Absolutely.
It's heavy. It's heavy in the conversation.
There are a ton of books that they are taking out of schools that tell the narrative of this country, and they just don't want to put that out there. They want to hide it.
And in general, just people expressing their thoughts or opinions and just getting shut down. I'm just saying that's a very relevant topic still.
Absolutely.
Just the question of censorship, and so that's another one.
Yeah,
that's another.
Well, y'all, I made a couple of notes about, and I honestly had to make a note about the dance scenes because I thought I would forget them. Okay, because they weren't sticking with me, to be honest. I had the one that was the 76 trombones at the high school. You remember when he was first introducing this concept? Of the band, and the whole town gets excited about it, and the kids are, everybody's dancing around. There was another one, which was the library.
Wait, before you go away from that though, I laughed to myself because I thought about that scene in real life. I said, you see people walking out of this building, marching, and they're just moving their hands, but there's no sound coming out. And I was just like, this is so interesting that I can't think about it like this. I have to think that there's a musical and everyone can hear these instruments that aren't really there. I was like, this is hilarious to me.
Well, what it was him introducing imagination to the town. So that's what you're seeing there from my perspective. Because remember, when he first arrived, they wouldn't even chit chat with him. He was like, so what do people do around here for fun? And the guy was like, mind their own business.
Right.
When he
said it, I said, wait, but y'all seem to know everybody's business because y'all be gossiping. Hold on, someone's lying.
But they weren't the town was not fun. It wasn't feeling good to people. And so what he was introducing to them was imagination. It was fun. And so that's where that music was coming from, sis, in their minds. It was like, it was him introducing fun.
Exactly. So that's why I said it's a musical.
It's a musical.
It's a musical. Because I was like, in real life, y'all look strange.
And it's funny because you say that made me think of another thing, because it's like, it's not just because when he came in, he didn't just talk about the positives from the band. He knows that groupthink needs an enemy. So it's like, he's surveying the town. People out of their own business, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I know, if I could get an enemy up in there, the pool table, that's going to get everybody.
Well,
once I present the enemy, now I can present the solution. Right.
Well, listen, though, what we have, which I meant to mention this earlier, but I forgot, you have to have a ride or die friend. Let me tell you, the Shipoopi man, I don't know his real name right now, his name.
That's Buddy Hackett, right?
That's right. Buddy Hackett.
Yeah.
Listen.
I like that song.
What was his character in the movie? What was his name? The character in the movie? That friend? He knew he was ride or die. As soon as he saw him, he was like, Gregory, what's going on? Da-da-da. He was like, what are you doing? He was like, oh, you're still doing the music, man. And like Gregory didn't even have to ask him. Well, Professor here didn't even have to ask him to get on board. He was already on board.
Buddy Hackett played Marcellus Washburn.
Listen, Marcellus was already on board. He was like, what do I need to do to help you? Now he lives in this town.
That's an interesting take.
He lives in this town.
That's an interesting take.
That makes me hate Harold Hill even more, because I forgot about that. Because Marcellus just had a nice life.
He turned over a new leaf.
Out the game. He turned over a new leaf. And by the end, he's trying to help Harold Hill.
It wasn't even by the end. It was immediate. Marcellus there was no question.
He hopped right on in.
All I'm saying is that all of us need that one friend. That's like if I call you up and I say I need you to do something.
To a good person.
Listen,
Harold Hill.
No questions.
We still don't even know his.
Marcellus knew his real name. He was like, hey, Gregory. He was like, I'm going by Harold Hill now.
Exactly. He was like, oh, he was like, you're doing the Music Man again? He was like, well, I don't know if that's going to work here. And he was like, but we got band. He was like, what? You got band uniforms now? Like, he was sold already. Marcellus was in. He was like, well, Mark, you got to help me. Like, what is going on here? He was like, there's nothing really happening here. He was like, well, we did get a new pool table. And that's where the pool table idea came from. And Marcellus was helping him out the whole time. If Marcellus did not have his back, I don't know if Harold Hill would have been able to get all done that he did get done.
Oh, he would have. He would have
found a way.
He did it in all those other cities.
Slimy.
True.
Like, because
But I'm just saying, Marcellus was on.
He was on it. But sis, it's so funny that you think of Marcellus and say, oh, look at you being a top-notch friend. Because when I look at Marcellus,
well, he's a top-notch friend to evil, but he's still a top-notch friend.
But sis, what he for me represented was like, see, that's why you can't trust nobody.
Listen,
both of these points are true.
Two things can't be true. James always says that, y'all.
That's why
two things can't be true.
Because honestly, that's what made me confused about my feelings on this movie.
Yep.
Because I'm like, they have I like how they handled a lot of this social commentary. I like how they made people act like real people. I like how everybody had flaws. Everybody had strengths. And as much as I hated how Harold Hill made it to the end virtually unscathed after years
and
of
got a boo.
Ripping through how many towns, and now he's got everything he's wanted. I'm like, but that's how stuff happens. So it's just like, that all was interesting to me as a movie.
A Music Man too, where the FBI comes for Professor Harold. Music
with a bucket of tar and a bucket of feathers. You're gonna get tarred and feathered.
I mean, something. Good gracious, a more outstanding award. Something.
Yeah.
Let him serve 5 years and come back out and be okay. But
he's gonna make a band in the prison.
So it's funny because I feel like this movie is so interesting.
Yeah,
but I'm slipping into vote mode.
And I'm going to tell y'all this.
One
of the things that as a kind of like a closing thought,
is
that I hate to say it, but as I was enjoying the movie, I couldn't help but think of people who could do these parts better. You know,
you know what? You don't open up another can of worms because
the whole time I was thinking of people.
There.
It's all there because I like those songs, like "You Got Trouble." You know, I like 76 Trombones. You know, I liked "Till There Was You." You know, I like those songs, but they just weren't performed at the level that could make them stick the way you would want them to. Yeah. You know, but they were good songs, but they just weren't performed at the level where you would hope they could have been.
But I will tell you this: you saying that they sold that movie for $1 million to network TV. I said to myself, well, somebody liked it. All these awards, I was somebody like this. I said, well,
this one is tricky, y'all.
I was like,
this one is tricky because
interesting.
Yeah, I actually I thought I was going to have a much better experience than I did because I remember how many times we watched it, and I'm like, if we watched it that many times, it has to be one of the better ones. And I remember the overall feeling being good, but like from an interesting thing to see, I would suggest somebody to watch it from that angle. But from a musical perspective,
bro, are you in vote mode right now? I think you're heading into vote, bro.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying as a musical. If I'm looking at this as a piece of history, it's very interesting. And I'm just letting you know the way that they touched on so many of those issues without being a champion for any of them. It was just like, this is how people are. And like, it was just very interesting to see. But as a musical, it was 30 to 40 minutes too long based on the content. There was I know there was 6 or 7 songs I could have just cut completely. And then the songs
didn't need any reprises.
Right. And you don't need to sing the same song twice.
Crossovers over and over. It was like
over and over again.
Need those crossovers.
And Genia just made the point that it also is kind of frustrating because as a musical fan, you could see how it could have been. Like it could have been like if the three of us really sat down and worked out that cast of who was available at that time, you know, based on all the stuff we saw, and just being able to interject a couple of really great numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, if you could just imagine the lead, I forget her name that quick, but she's the piano player. She's the piano teacher. And in the library,
Marion Peru, played by Shirley Jones.
Right. And so she's also she's the librarian, but she's also a piano teacher, right? So because that was the whole thing. I got to get past the real musician. Just imagine a moment where maybe she was singing about that loneliness or whatever she was communicating in front of the piano,
and playing
in front of the music man or something. It would have just been making him understand. Like that would have been a great moment. So it's like this had all the bones for a great musical, but it just I still don't know. We're about to vote.
We are voting. That is what was happening.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
You go first. I'm going last.
Whoa, he's never done that before.
We can switch that up.
It's season 3.
I need 30 more seconds.
3.
Let's do it.
Listen.
Let's start with Brittany.
All right. Well, I will tell you, I didn't have any nostalgia for this movie because I couldn't remember
me neither
any of it, and that's right. As I
like it hit a couple nostalgia buttons.
Not
like
even
when
the Wells Fargo wagon is coming down the street.
Yeah,
no matter how many times you sing it, Janiyah, no.
We used to laugh at that.
Is that no?
It was like, but yes, that's a great. It didn't.
And I'm just, I wanted y'all know. I always think about, am I gonna let my kids watch this? That like these children that don't exist right now. Like if I have them, I'm gonna be like, sit down. This is my childhood. You're watching.
Right.
This is not the music. Right. It's the Music Man would not come to mind. It just wouldn't. And it wasn't that it was some horrible movie.
Right.
The information, even the stats that Janiyah gave in terms of how many awards they won, all this stuff, I was really shocked. And I was like, this can't be one of the better musicals. And so, but with all that being said, I enjoyed it, but it definitely does not get my conductor stick.
Well, I will tell y'all, I mean, like Brittany said, it's like I enjoyed it, but it didn't draw me in. Mm-mm. I felt the whole 13 hours of this movie. Okay. It was
it's 2.5.
It was 2.5 hours, but it was too long. It was too long. And what I really needed was something to be awesome. It like if there was like some awesome dancing, I feel like it would tip me over, the scale a little bit. If there was some awesome singing, and I think the one really great singer we had here was Shirley Jones as Marion Peru.
Yeah.
But even her, I would not put at the level of some of these other leading ladies that we have seen. She did a very good job, and she also had some beautiful songs to sing. So, but again, it just
and she did great acting as well.
I will say that because what one thing about her is she is a better actor than some of the leading ladies that we have talked about.
Absolutely,
this is true.
Which it makes you wonder.
Though.
What is
it's
a musical, but
I would sacrifice on the acting for a musical. Yeah, I'm sacrificing on acting before singing if it's a musical.
That's a good point.
I can see that.
But she's definitely a stronger actor than some of our favorite singers from musicals. And I gotta say, it was
shout out to Jolie Andrews. You have both. Okay.
Yeah, you do.
You're a great actress and singer. All right, done.
The way that the central love story was portrayed, y'all, to me, it was so special. I was like, man, it's like to have the woman be able to say, you know what, I'm just going to be present in this moment. I'm going for the ride. That's a relatively modern way of thinking about, love and sex and all of those things, to just be in the moment, to not put all the pressure on it, take it for what it is, ride it on out. And she was in that, and I was just like, that's really special, And like I said earlier, y'all, there were some songs I really like. I like 76 Trombones. That You Got Trouble at the top. Yeah. I enjoyed that greatly, but I also think that the actor.
What are you talking?
Yes.
Yes. Gotta get territory.
Yeah. Good Night, My Someone.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh man. And there's the Till There Was You. Those are beautiful songs. So I can see why it won for like best score because of those hits. But I also think those songs could have been, frankly, just performed better by other people. So y'all, this is hard. And there's no one else for me to pass it to, or I would say I'm not ready to vote yet. Let someone else go.
I'm getting enough time.
I'm just going to do it, bro. I'm just going to do it. I can't make this movie a classic. And I am, though, going to make Till There Was You a classic song. And I am going to make.
Oh, we showing out in season 3.
Yeah, I'm going to make Good Night, My Someone and 76 Trombones. Those are 3 classic songs. But this movie.
Look, we're gonna let that one slide.
This movie is not. It does not get precedent. It does not get.
I think it is.
No, we're not going to start. No, because that gives us too much leeway.
Yes, no.
That gives us too much leeway.
Because now it does not get my conductor stick.
Look, because now we'll
do too much parsing.
It's too much parsing. And there'll be movies that
it's a slippery slope.
It should be straight, not classics.
Yeah,
and we'll be like, but I like this scene.
That's so right.
This scene will be, we're not even going.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for that.
This one
you know what?
For Act 7 is a classic.
Yes, from timestamp 1620 to 1823. No, bro. Thank you for just challenging me to live in our format. I thank you for that.
We're gonna
it is not a classic for me. It does not get my conductor stick.
Yeah,
it just can't. And I wanted to give it. I
thought this one was in the bag. Honestly, like I was like, I didn't realize I didn't remember the movie until I started watching it, and I thought this was just going to be in the bag, because we've seen it so many times.
Yep.
And then as soon as I started watching, I'm like, if we saw it that many times, why don't I remember this plot? I remember all the other plots, and then I'm starting to watch it, and like I'm feeling like it's long. And there's movies that's longer. My Fair Lady takes 2 tapes, but like I'll watch that. No, I can go watch that right now.
It's a really good
no
point,
problem.
Bro.
Like no problem.
It's a good.
And
good point.
it just felt like, you know how you watch something, you start getting hot, like, God, dog, this is over yet.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? And I was torn just because it's very interesting. And there's a lot of interesting points, but as a musical, I just cannot say this is a classic.
Well, there you have it, folks. That is 0 conductor sticks, meaning that the Music Man is not a classic from the Wright Perspective. Thank you for joining us, y'all. Thank you for being a part of season 3. We're having such a good time. We're so happy for your support. We thank you. Love you, bro. Love you, sis.
Yes. Love you guys. Bye.